Welcome to the show that features Matters Africa. It's a great pleasure to have you with us. Now, this week we focus on the AU Agenda 2063 and the youth engagement in this process. We feature highlights from a lecture and panel session held at the University of Nairobi. Fascinating. You're certainly going to enjoy this show. We also get your views on the issues, and we have Africa's Top 10. You're watching the Africa Leadership Dialogues. I'm Julie Gichuru. The AU Agenda 2063 is an approach on how the African continent should effectively learn from the lessons of the past, build on the progress now underway, and strategically exploit all possible opportunities available in the immediate and medium term so as to ensure positive socio-economic transformation within the next 50 years. But how can the youth on the continent get more involved? That's the question we sought to answer in a lecture and panel session that was held at the University of Nairobi in partnership with Oxfam, State of the Union, and Fahamu. Tonight, we feature highlights of this insightful session, attended by Chief of Staff of the AU Commission, Ambassador Jean-Baptiste Natama, and Professor PLO Lumumba, advocate, lecturer, and former anti-corruption crusader in Kenya. Let's get straight to the session.
As I thought about this event, I cast my memory back to the 24th day of May 1963. On that day, Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah made a speech in which he exhorted the 32 odd African leaders present at African Hall in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to unite immediately. Kwame Nkrumah said many things, but one of the most important things he said is that Africa must unite now. Kwame Nkrumah said that Africa must neither look east nor west, Africa must look forward. Several years down the line, those immortal words of Kwame Nkrumah remain so true and yet so relevant, and Africa is still speaking the same language. I remember very vividly in those early years when the average age of the African leadership was no more than 30, that the African leaders were unanimous in a number of things. They were unanimous that if Africa was to realize our potential, Africa had to address our economy. Africa had to address her agriculture. Africa had to address her security, and many things which in their views would underpin the development of Africa and make Africa be a proud citizen of the world. So the question that we must ask today, as we remember Kwame Nkrumah, is your generation capable of moving us to the next level? Or once again, 2063 will be a mirage? It could very well be that in 100 years' time, if you ask the young Africans whether they want to be colonized, they will say, yes, colonize us. So 2063 is beckoning us, but I fear Chinua Achebe is posing the question that he posed in 1958 as a 22-year-old. Where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana dies? Even those who have gone to school can no longer see the truth as it is. That is the tragedy of Africa. We can call for us such as this, times without number. But until the day we change our attitude, we are going nowhere. Even in universities such as this, even you who are present here, when you are called upon to elect your leaders, you elect them on the basis of your tribe. How are you going to change Africa if that is the dominant instinct that leads you. 2063 is better. Julius Kambarage Nyerere was right when he said in Kiswahili, thamani ya taifa ni kuwa na vijana wenye malezi bora, siha njema na bongo kali. John F. Kennedy in 1960s, on the occasion of the founding of the American Peace Corps, said, a society that does not pay regard to its youth is a society adrift, a giant headed to the rocks. We come here, therefore, courtesy of Oxfam and SOT, to remind ourselves that if Africa is to realize our potential, then our young men and women must liberate themselves from the chains of low self-esteem. If Africa is to realize our potential, the African young man and woman must have the dominant instinct as the instinct of behaving as if they were not children of a lesser God. If Africa is to realize our potential, the young African must liberate herself from jingoistic, atavistic behavior of ethnicity, which denies us the opportunity to realize our potential. The choice is yours. Everybody knows that Africa is the continent with the greatest resources, except Africa. For how long shall we allow ignorance to be bliss? So I urge you to make and give meaning to 2063. So that when I'm upstairs, I can say, behold, it is good. Behold, it is good. God bless you.
We want to get to the discussion. And I want to start with Teresa. You are within the AU system at the moment.
I am.
You're still very young. Just graduated recently. My question to you then is, what is it that the youth expect from the African Union to enable us to deliver on 2063, but also, what should Africa expect from the youth? Thank you.
Well, as the youth, we always say, or these days we say that Africa is a youthful continent. So it basically means we're looking at over 60% of the population. There are a lot of expectations from both sides, from we the youth to the African Union, and our wonderful continent have large expectations from us. We are the drivers of the future, okay? We are individuals, we are youth that are full of energy, we are youth that are hopeful, okay? I don't like speaking about problems, I like speaking about challenges, because when you talk about challenges, you're talking about an opportunity to do something about it. But we need a good platform. We need a continental platform. We need to be integrated as youth of the continent. And I think the AU, that is where the AU will come in. It will aid us in being integrated. When we're looking at different ideas of having a continental visa, when we're looking at ideas of free movement of individuals, of goods, of services, when we're looking at inter-African trade, we're looking at the AU to give us that nice platform, that solid platform, such that we can engage in an integrated manner. But also as the youth, we've realized that not everything is going to be handed to us on a silver platter. We need to work. We need to work. My fellow friends, we need to work.
And with that, we come to Dr. Awino Okech, who is based at the University of Cape Town, and I believe you focus on gender studies, actually. So bringing in the women, the issue of women as well, even as we discuss the youth, what are the challenges facing the engagement of youth and women in actualizing the vision and the dream for 2063, and what can the Africa Union do to change that?
I think that the question of participation is a question of conceptualization, because I think the debates around youth on the continent have been heard from the perspective that youth are a problem, youth are in crisis, and therefore our response to the crisis of youth has been based on the need to resolve a problem and not necessarily understanding the factors of exclusion that actually lead to the kinds of restlessness, if you will, that we are seeing amongst young people. So when we talk about Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab as being youthful-led, the questions that we should be asking ourselves is, why is it that we have a large majority of young people who are so easily radicalized as a means of finding voice, as a means of finding platforms to articulate challenges that they feel the governments and states of the day are not responding to? I think we must look to the factors of inequality and factors of social exclusion as a means to resolve youthhood and youth participation. And I think one of the major problems, if you look at all of the debates that have been happening in the African Union with the Economic Commission in Africa around post-2015 and otherwise, has been to say, well, the youth problem is a problem of unemployment. Let's give them something to do. Now, in the Kenyan context, we know what that something to do has been. You know, people have been given jobs to slash along the road. People have been given all manner of menial tasks because we are not realizing that the crisis of unemployment is a crisis of an effective political and economic program developed by a state to respond to inequalities. The crisis of unemployment is a crisis of legitimacy. And so until our states begin to think about developing political and economic programs that actually respond to inequalities, we are simply going to be, being reactive and actually saying, let's just keep them quiet. They're soon going to go into the streets and going to demand change, so let's keep them quiet. I think that for me is one of the major issues.
Thank you so much.
Stay with the African Leadership Dialogues.
Please put your hands up if you'd like to ask something to anybody on our panel today. Make a comment. Let me see the hands going up, please.
My name is Owalo Chen, an alumni of Nairobi University, and a member of the Social Democratic Party of Kenya. I'm very much grateful to Professor PLO and Ambassador Jean for their good speeches. But one thing we have to correct, one thing that we have to set right, is that if we want to quote the founders of Africa, then we have to quote them fully. We have to believe, we have to believe in them fully. We shall not partially believe in them. The spirit of Kwame Nkrumah was to unite Africa, not only on a social platform, not only on an economic platform, but also on a political platform. Why are we so quick to ignore the political platform? Once upon a time we had Gaddafi. Today is no more, but Gaddafi believed in this. Gaddafi fought for this. Africa Union was not there to talk when Gaddafi was going down. Last year, I had a chance to meet Madam Jelani Zuma at the AU. We shared a lot. Then I asked, I told Madam one thing, that at the end of the day, now you have a chance. You know, she's very progressive, and I appreciate the fact that she's very progressive and the much that she has done for Africa. But then I told her that now you have a chance to do all the things that you spoke of when you are not in this position. When you leave this position, Africa wants to see what are you engaging.
When anyone hears in the media about Africa, all they see is poverty, HIV, AIDS, all that stuff, but we are the future. That is, somebody here is going to be the next president come 2063. Someone is going to be the next, media personality. How will they put Africa on the outside platform? How will that person who's going to be a media personality put forth Africa outside there, not to look as a country full of poverty, but a country that is well endowed with resources?
So how do we do? I don't buy the whole leaders of tomorrow thing. I think that's the problem. So let me ask you, what are your plans? What are you going to do?
Well, the major thing that we need to do, as the speakers have said, is the basic change of our mindset and to be able to come forward to change the basic stereotype that is there about Africa.
Thank you very much. A lot has been said, but let me make the following observations. One, African problems are known. A number of initiatives have been undertaken, and there has been a lot of writing, which I would commend to you. As long as Africa remains aid dependent independent Africa is going nowhere. And I'm inviting you to read Dambisa Moyo's book, Dead Aid. This is a university. Read Dead Aid by Dambisa Moyo, and her latest book, Winner Takes It All. I think it is by reading some of these things, particularly at the university, that you get to appreciate that there are Africans both resident here and in the diaspora who are interested in Africa. And another book that you must read is Greg Mill's book, Why Africans Are Poor and What Africans Can Do About It. And it is very simple. Greg Mill says that Africans are poor because their leaders have chosen the path of poverty. And who have chosen the leaders? It is us. So we are co-authors of our own misfortune. And therefore, we can speak all we want, but will not realize our potential. Look at the way we operate in this country and in many African countries. There is something called benchmarking. These benches, can they not be found in Africa? These benches to be marked. Must they be marked in Colombia, in Europe, in Singapore? And for how long must we do it? And at an individual level, I appreciate your enthusiasm as a young person. Mr. Wallo. When we say these things within the short period that we have, we are conscious of the full input of the founding fathers. But we are saying that the development of a process is like metamorphosis, from egg to larva to pupa and to adult. No instant coffee solutions. But at an individual level, what are you doing? I can say with confidence today that if you go to my rural home and ask them what I've done, they'll show you things that I've done. If you go to my residence here in Nairobi, ask them what I've done, they'll show you things that I've done. I was a student here. You'll be shown what I've done. As an alumni, the Vice Chancellor will show you what I've done and still doing. If you go to East Africa, you'll be told what I'm doing. If you go to Africa, you'll be told what I'm doing. I stopped complaining. I stopped complaining. And the second last thing that I want to say is you must read. It used to be said that if you want to hide anything from an African, keep it in a book. There is no danger of it being found. So you must read and go out, descend from this ivory tower. We now live in a continent where people are obsessed with acquisition of certificates, not knowledge. We just want certificates for degrees, but not knowledge. The last thing I want to say is what Achebe talks about in the book, The Trouble with Nigeria. It could very well be The Trouble with Africa, the title of that book. But he says the problem of Africa is what he calls the cargo cult mentality. The belief by backward people that without any effort on their part, some ship laden with all the good they have ever wanted will dock in their port of hope. That is the problem of Africa. I call it the Serikali Nisaidie syndrome. What are you doing? The African Union is not going to come here. The African Union will give the ideas. Then you Kenyans must cascade them down. And that is all I wish to say. There are things to be done, and I want to see the university doing those things. I run a foundation and I've now taken the decision. I don't ask for donor funding. I don't. I write my books. The royalties I receive from my books is what I use. No donor funding, and I feel free. I feel free. Thank you.
Let me come, Teresa, to you, and you've heard the views that have been shared. And I want to ask this question. If you were in the role of Dlamini Zuma right now, Nkosazana, and you heard the comments that have just been shared with us, would you feel like you know what the African youth need and there are decisive steps that you can take to address their needs? Or would you feel there's still a gap, I still am not quite sure? What would you be thinking?
I hope that happens one day, that I'd be in her shoes. You know what? First and foremost, as if I was in her position, I would like the youth to remember the AU is not far removed. The AU is you and I. The AU is our presidents coming together, making decisions, and these decisions have to be implemented somehow. That is how the AUC comes in. So when you're talking about the AU coming into the grassroots levels, if I was in Nkosazana's place, I'd say, fair enough. I would love to come into the grassroots levels. But as the chairperson of the AU or the AUC, it's not my mandate. It is not my mandate. Okay. But honestly speaking, we need to take ownership of our actions. We need to take the ownership of our choices. With the choices that we make, that is the only way we'll be able to see these grassroots level implementations being realized. Okay? Now, Nkosazana Zuma has a very difficult job. She has a very difficult job. We as the youth in the AUC are always asking her, what are you going to do for us? How are you going to help us in the AUC? How are you going to help the youth of Africa? We can't always keep asking. We need to take the responsibility. We need to share the responsibility. We need to be accountable.
Ambassador, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. The essence of this dialogue is, from my understanding, to help all of us identify our role and responsibilities. Our responsibility as a group of individuals, but our responsibility as a community, and our responsibility as individuals. But when we spend our time complaining, we are moving the problem. We are not solving the problem. When you spend your time complaining, you are pointing finger at someone, you are ignoring your own responsibility. This is why I call for accountability, which is a mutual responsibility actually for every one of us in a society. When we are talking about the youth is not the future. The youth is a present. You are powerful, you have the responsibility to exert this power that you have to change the society as you want the society to be. When I heard some of you talking, there were this same way of thinking about what are you doing for us, about calling for assistance. We are going back to the same thing we are talking about. Don't wait anybody to own your destiny. Take your own destiny in your hands. Take your responsibility. This is where you can make the change. As an individual, you can impact your own community. You are a leader. You can make changes at your own level. And a little change made by you at your own level, put together with the other changes made by other leaders at different levels, can achieve a great change for the society. And the time is a call for action, not for complaint. Action is where we need to take responsibility to make sure that we as Africans, we are able to build the future we want for Africa. And this is what I can say, and I hope we will continue engaging and not running away from our responsibilities or not trying to find out who is responsible for this, but we have the responsibility. And as citizens in this country and in the African countries, don't underestimate your power. You have the capability of influencing things than nobody else. The power you have to influence your government in your country, the AU doesn't have this power. because what we have derives from what the member states give us. So if you are able to get the right people at the right place, you will have the best African Union you want. I thank you.
Thank you for participating. I think the most powerful message as we close is action. Be action-oriented. Leadership given is not leadership. And no one attains real leadership without doing something. So when we keep saying leaders of tomorrow, it's almost an assumption that it's like graduating from standard 1 to standard 2. It's not. I know people who have reached 60 years old, 70, who have died and never been leaders. Yes, I know people who are under 18 who are incredible leaders. And you just need to decide. Let me finish by saying you're a generation who are going to now start having children, if some of you don't already have your children. With my children, I ask them, what's the problem? They tell me, or they come to me with a problem. Then I ask them, what's the solution? Before I impose. So train yourselves that way. See the problem, frame your solution. As you have your children, identify the problem and engage with them on the solution. Perhaps that's how we will start to change our societies.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
One word for that session: intense. And a huge challenge to us all as Africans to read more, engage more, and be more aware of the context of issues so that we can be part of creating positive change across the continent. Now, let's get your views on the issues.
This week, we asked you, what challenges do African youth face and who bears the greatest responsibility for change? Kitema Alex says, challenges are lack of jobs, illiteracy, capital to start business, and lack of knowledge on how to manage them. Governments bear the responsibility. Bet Robert says, the mindset predisposes the youth to believe that the world owes them, hence they stagnate in this mode forever.
Hi, my name is Nila Sadora and I'm watching African Leadership Dialogue from Nairobi. Some of the challenges that the African youth are facing are lack of employment, misuse of illegal drugs, early parenthood, early marriages, illegal abortions. And the people who are concerned in making this mayhem become an issue of the past are the teachers back at school, the parents back at home, the government at large, and the media. The media can use their platforms in coming up with the family programs that can help educate the young Africans about the disadvantages of becoming early parents. Thank you.
To join our conversation, go to our G+ page, Africa Leadership Dialogues. On Facebook, Africa Leadership Dialogues. On Twitter, @AfricaLD. And on WhatsApp, send your video comments to +254 715 816 033.
Thank you for constantly sharing your views, engaging, debating on all these issues that affect the African continent. We appreciate your feedback. Right now, it's time for Africa's Top 10.
On Africa's Top 10 this week, we feature the top programs of action for African youth undertaken by the UNDP. At number 10 are programs encouraging effective participation of youth in the life of society and in decision making. This includes efforts to promote the social, political development and environmental participation of young people and the removal of obstacles that impede their full contribution to society. At number 9 is the empowerment of girls and young women. This involves action to develop educational materials that address issues of gender balance, promote an educational setting that eliminates all barriers that impede the schooling of girls and young women, and enact and enforce national legislation protecting girls and young women from all forms of violence. At number 8 is the development of constructive leisure activities. These include games, sports, cultural events, entertainment, and community services, and are aimed at fighting social ills such as drug abuse and juvenile delinquency. The establishment of public libraries, cultural centers and other facilities in rural and urban areas to provide opportunities for young people to be active in drama, fine arts, music and other forms of cultural expression is key. The efforts to reduce juvenile crime and delinquency comes in at position 7. There is evidence of continental increase in juvenile criminality in situations of economic recession, especially in marginal sectors of urban centers. Destitution, poor living conditions, inadequate education, and unemployment are factors that make the youth vulnerable to exploitation. Essential actions to address this include improved access to quality education and opportunities and providing youth in rural areas with adequate socio-economic opportunities and services to discourage young people from migrating to urban areas. Taking the number 6 spot is the fight against drug abuse. The increased vulnerability of youth to this problem is becoming a major concern. This involves efforts to end drug abuse through educational programs for children and youth about the dangers of drug abuse and increasing opportunities for gainful employment and activities which provide recreation and opportunities to develop variety of skills. Conservation of the environment takes the number 5 spot. The deterioration of natural environment is one of the principal concerns of young people in Africa as it has direct implications for their well-being now and in the future. The program proposes action to integrate environmental education in school curricula and offer training programs to teachers on the environmental aspects of their subject matter. At number 4 is promoting access to quality healthcare services. Health problems that face young people include the lack of safe and sanitary living environments, malnutrition, the risk of infectious, parasitic, and waterborne diseases. The program proposes action to ensure continental, non-discriminatory access to basic health services, including sanitation and clean drinking water to protect health and promote nutrition education and preventive health programs. At number 3 is fighting hunger and poverty. Poverty has been linked to lack of access to or control over resources like land, skills, knowledge, capital, and social connections. Without these resources, young people are particularly vulnerable. This proposes action to enhance educational and cultural services and other incentives in rural areas to make them more attractive to young people and initiate experimental farming programs directed towards them. Positioned at number 2 is the provision of affordable and quality education. The major challenges faced by the current systems of education in Africa include socio and political conditions, the quality of education and its relevance to employment, and the paucity of education opportunities for girls, young women, young people with disabilities, and other youth minorities. The program proposes action to give priority to improving the level of basic education, skill training, and literacy among all youth, including women and youth in distress. And at number 1 this week is the creation of employment opportunities. The difficulty of finding suitable employment is compounded by a host of problems confronting young people, including illiteracy and insufficient training. The program proposes action to provide opportunities for self-employment, such as the creation of grant schemes to provide seed money to encourage and support enterprise and employment programs for young people. This will also create employment opportunities for young people in fields that are rapidly evolving as a result of technical innovation. And that's Africa's Top 10 this week.
We end the show this week with an apt quote from Nelson Mandela. He said, "Education is the most powerful tool we have to change the world." And so, wherever you might be, educate yourself so that you can change this continent, Africa, and in doing so, change the world. Blessings to you and blessings to Africa.